traveling. It leaves you speechless and then turns you into a storyteller, said by IBN Batuta. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you present here. The travel-related stories concerning tourism journey, cultural heritage legacies, historical background, and the people around are one of the significant memories a tourist accumulates as a souvenir from a tourist place. The memories concerning historical background and the occurrences which reflects unpleasant phenomenon depicting miseries, death, disasters, paranormal activities, atrocities and human sufferings can be termed as dark tourism. The destination which possesses all such attributes can be called as dark tourist destination. On this occasion of 75th independence of our country, the Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotinivas College Autonomous, would like to present an international virtual panel meet addressing the theme, venturing into the panorama of dark tourism by portraying illustrious freedom struggle, perseverance, and determination of eminent patriots during different period of time in India. The department aims to reminiscent the sense of self-sacrifice and patriotism towards our own domicile nation through the concept of dark tourism by depicting the tale of untold stories and folklore on this esteemed platform. I am honored and privileged to introduce our first panelist, Dr. James Kennell, is a deputy head of the Department of Marketing, Event and Tourism at the University of Greenwich, United Kingdom, where he has led programs in tourism management for more than a decade. Dr. James is a keen researcher, concentrates on policy and political economy aspects of tourism. Being a member of Tourism Society, United Kingdom, Professor Kennell is a regular contributor to national and international media on tourism and politics. On behalf of Principal, College Management, Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotinivas College Autonomous, I welcome you, sir. I would like to welcome. Yes, sir. We are happy to have you.
I'm very, very happy to be invited. Thank you very much to you, your colleagues, and to the department. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, sir. I would like to welcome Mr. Samik Ray, presently designated as Regional Level Guide Trainer under the Department of Tourism, Government of India. Sir is a recipient of National Tourism Award by Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, in the category of Best Tourist Guide in 2017, and also a recipient of Certificate of Excellence for Overseas Adventure Travel South Asia from Overseas Adventure Travel United States of America in 2015. Sir has delivered resource talks at numerous national and international seminars, conferences, travel marts, and skill development workshops as a resource speaker and panelist. Developed digital content for India Tourism under the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Mr. Ray has authored many books, chapters, and articles in several reputed tourism journals at national and internationally acclaimed tourism volumes. On behalf of Principal, College Management, Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotinivas College Autonomous, I welcome you, sir.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Gul Erkol Beram, is currently designated as Associate Professor in the Department of Tour Guiding, School of Tourism and Hotel Management, University of Sinop, Turkey. Dr. Gul has many book chapters and articles in her name at several national and internationally reputed journals and books. Dr. Gul is a renowned woman academician and researcher, represented tourism at many national and international forums. On behalf of Principal, College Management, Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotinivas College Autonomous, I welcome you, ma'am.
Greetings to all my Indian friends from a very warmy day in Turkey, and also my warm regards to all my colleagues. I am so happy to be with you in this important session. Kind regards.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here. I would like to welcome all the registered participants and all the registered participants, members from all over the country and world to this August event. Hope all of you will have an enriching experience. Now, I invite Mr. Priyakrishna Mohanty, Assistant Professor, Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotinivas College Autonomous, to moderate the session. Over to you, Mohanty.
Thank you, Manisha ma'am, and thank you to all the revered guests who are present out here. So before starting the session, I would be giving some of the guidelines that we will be following while we are in the session. All participants can post your questions in the chat box, which will be open throughout. And at the end of the seminar, we will be checking the questions and we will be taking few of the questions if the time permits. Apart from that, in every question, there will be references to many of the works that the participants can actually note and which will be used for the future reference purposes. At the end of the semester, we will compile all the responses of the guests and it will be provided to the participant on request basis also. So with that, we will start the session. So the session will be in a discussion format. James will be here with us for around 40 minutes. So I will start with James. So James, it's like dark tourism and thana tourism, as they say, where I mean, for the benefit of all the participants who are new to dark tourism concept, it was so primarily started during the assassination of JFK. And if I'm not wrong, then Foley and Lennon actually started this concept right back in the 1996 period. And since then, a lot of water has gone under the bridge and we have come up to a stage where you have also made your name in the dark tourism scholarship, if I'm not wrong. So in that, we will start with a very light question. So basic thing is dark tourism is such a broad concept because it has heritage tourism, it has tourism experiences, special interest tourism, it concerns criminology, sociology, it also concerns psychology. So having this much of broadness in the scholarship of dark tourism, don't you think that dark tourism sometimes can lose itself in the obscurity of its own vastness? So what's your point on that?
Thank you very much for that question. I think you've cut really to the heart of lots of the debates about dark tourism there. It's the concept of dark tourism is at once very, very broad, so broad as to almost have no meaning. But also we all have a sense that we know what it is, and it's actually something very narrow, and it's something that's to do with death and tragedy and suffering. And it's very, very hard to pin down what it is. One of the problems that I think we have in researching dark tourism is that nobody has yet found the dark tourist. We don't find people who want to define themselves as dark tourists, and that makes it very hard to work out exactly what dark tourists do, because most of our research in tourism is based around what tourists do. All the stuff on the supply side is one thing, but it's all about meeting the needs of tourists. And actually, we don't really know who dark tourists are or what they want or where they go. So for me, it's not always a problem of trying to define it on the supply side. It's trying to understand the demand for dark tourism. And I think the trap that we fall into is to always try and pin things down, to develop these really neat segments like we have in marketing. that really put people into boxes that make it easy for us to speak to them, to attract them, and so on. But actually, most people who engage in dark tourism do all kinds of other things. They might be cultural tourists, heritage tourists, as you said. They might just be on holiday and enjoying the leisure aspects of tourism, and then spend a small amount of time being interested in the dark narratives or the dark histories of a particular place. So it is very, come back to your question, it's incredibly hard to define dark tourism, but I'm quite comfortable with that, because I think that actually most of the tourism that we categorize as academics is quite open-ended and vague. And it's only a very select few tourists who are happy to pin themselves down and say they are one type of tourist. So I think maybe there are no dark tourists, but maybe there are also no cultural tourists, heritage tourists, sports tourists. As academics, there are just tourists doing lots of different things, and we have to try and understand that.
Okay, so coming on to your point that there may not be any dark tourist. Similar to that, there may not be any responsible tourist. There may not be any natural based tourists, but still we have those form of tourists which are recognized in the form of the business. But coming on to the supply side of the aspect of the dark tourism, how would you say that a tour agent specialized in the dark tourism, how would you define dark tourism would be my precise question to you.
Okay, so for me, this comes back to that much more narrow sense of dark tourism, which I think is much easier on the supply side. And for me, it is tourism associated with human suffering. Okay. And suffering is this very diverse thing. And sometimes it's about death, and sometimes it's about disasters and tragedies. It can be about war, it can be about conflict. But it's fundamentally, it's about suffering and all the different ways in which suffering has taken place.
Thank you, sir. So, Samik sir, would you like to comment on that?
So actually, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Actually, I want to describe this topic from the experience point of view, as I am in the field for a long time. I think dark tourism refers to the practice of commodifying, because the coinage of dark tourism term is of late, of commodifying morbid, tangible and intangible contents and attractions, creating various shades of morbid or non-morbid appeal among tourist or touristic experience or consumption at the visitation. Indeed, dark tourism sites, though conceptually and apparently connected to death, tragedies, battle, fight, killing, paranormal phenomenon, disasters, etc., but consumption experience or appeal may not be morbid always. If narratives are not set and created in subjective way or with specific intention and interest by tourist experience creators or narrators. For example, I want to cite one example from India. You know, the Kanpur siege during the mutiny. There are a lot of remnants of Kanpur siege in India, especially in Kanpur. The massacre ghat, Bibi Ghar, and All Souls Memorial Church, so on and so forth, which now stand evoking the story of 1857 Kanpur siege. It was said that many Britons were killed by the sepoys or mutineers during the siege. And just alternative way, there is a banyan tree. It is said that the banyan tree has witnessed the mass hanging of mutineers, around 150, maybe less, people during 1857 rebellion. So visit to those sites may evoke a set of contradictory appeal in the mind of visitors, a sign of cruelty, an outburst against atrocity or challenges to the existing rule or system. That is, I think, there are war memorials and internment sites, which are considered as the dark tourism sites. across the globe. Apparently, those sites are connected to dark tourism, but a visit to those may evoke appeal linked to the bravery and cruelty, glory and sadness, victory and defeat, or aggression and resistance to aggression. So visit to historic battle sites also evoke similar contradictory appeals.
I think I have to stop you here because we have
Yeah, yeah,
also other questions which are in the similar
yeah, yeah.
lines. So, Gul ma'am, would you like to contribute your share of thoughts on this? That how would you
Uh,
define dark tourism per se?
yes. In my country, dark tourism differs to very parts and very tourism types. It is possible to contact with different tourism types. For example, maybe you know our the leader Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and his tombs in Ankara. This place is most visited once, and also another important place is Çanakkale, another important dark tourism sites, and this is the most visiting places in Turkey. But by the way, we can make another touristic activities during these times. So, thanks to many TV series or documentaries, dark tourism features has changed so much. Maybe it is unethical to this debate. Dark tourism is so popular during 21st century, and it also gained academic attentions early 90s. For example, many recent publications said related dark tourism that dark tourism is a circulation of people to places characterized by distress, atrocity, sadness, and pain. As we would like to a more specific components of dark tourism, maybe we can define disaster tourism, and this denotes situations where the tourism product is generated within and from and the aftermath of a major disaster or traumatic event. Dark tourism, many different dark tourism can create many different dark activities also. In my country, Turkey, we can do basic dark tourism activities, visiting dark tourism sites or seeing our important tombs. But around the world, we can know many different activities. For example, some dark fun factories, dark exhibitions, dark dangerous places, resting places, and many more I can say. So dark tourism can show us so refreshing tourism activities.
Sure,
I
sure.
can answer your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so I'll quickly come back to James on this on the other aspect because you have to leave. I think within 20 minutes you have to leave. So Light in his article 2017 article Progress in Dark Tourism and Thana Tourism Research notes that there is quite bit of controversy surrounding dark tourism. Some find it disrespectful, voyeuristic, and even unethical to an extent. What's your opinion about the statement that dark tourism glorifies human sufferings?
I think dark tourism makes a lot of people very uncomfortable as an idea, and I think there are a few different reasons for this. I don't think dark tourism glorifies death and suffering any more than religion does, or Hollywood movies do, or or history books do. People are fascinated by human experience at the extremes. We only have to watch people's reactions to disasters, to wars, to rolling news broadcasts, to understand that we're interested to know something about other people and something about potentially about ourselves and how we would cope with life at the extremes. So I don't believe that dark tourism glorifies death per se, although of course some attractions might get that balance wrong. Some suppliers might get that wrong, and we have in London, for example, we don't have many serious dark tourism attractions. We have a lot of very entertainment based dark tourism attractions. We have dungeons you can visit and Jack the Ripper tours you can go on, and there is actually a bit of a move taking place now to try and reevaluate some of those, particularly Jack the Ripper, famous Victorian serial killer in London, and going on a Jack the Ripper tour is seen as something fun and kind of silly. It's more like a ghost tour, but there's a lot of serious historians and tourism scholars working now on trying to rediscover the stories and voices of the women who were killed by Jack the Ripper, and to try and understand the social conditions at the time. So dark tourism doesn't have to glorify death and violence. Some attractions get that wrong, but what dark tourism does do, I think, is it pushes our idea of tourism to quite an extreme. Tourism has always been, I think, in academia about either leisure or business travel. And the idea of serious leisure or serious tourism is something that was being talked about in leisure studies 20 years ago. But tourism as a discipline does actually struggle with the idea of learning taking place or personal development taking place through a tourism experience. I think a lot of people who are very critical of dark tourism, what they're really suspicious of is tourists. That actually the idea that a tourist could be doing something positive, or a tourist could be doing something that was somehow connected to learning or self-improvement is anathema to them. People see dark tourists as the modern equivalent of grave robbers, people who are profiteering or somehow enjoying having this fun experience and other people's suffering. And dark tourists is somehow kind of morally suspect. I spoke at an event a couple of years ago working with museums and heritage professionals, and a very senior museum director from London said to me, "Oh, we don't want those death perverts walking around our building." The tourists themselves were seen as being somehow morally suspect, and I think this really comes back to what Jim Butcher has written about recently, is this sense of there being a kind of war on tourism. A sense that everything tourists do must be bad, so that when we have heritage or difficult narratives about a place or a history of tragedy or conflict, whenever you add tourists to it, that must be a bad thing. And I think it comes down to a broader sense that from a lot of people that whatever tourists do must be bad. So to come back to your question, no, I don't think dark tourism glorifies human suffering. I think it reflects a very deep interest that we have in life at the extreme. But I do think that a lot of people think dark tourism glorifies suffering, and I think that's because a lot of people don't like tourism and they don't like tourists.
It's very loud and clear that what you said, but I am interested to know, okay, you are saying about maybe you have not come across dark tourism sites which are extremes like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or Auschwitz in Poland. So my point is, what do you tell about those dark tourism sites? Because, okay, I accept the fact that there is something related to the vilifying of profiteering from the tourism aspect. We all know that. But still, this is something which is very dark, and to the point so dark that it can hurt some of the people. So as to say, Jallianwala Bagh in India. So what's your point on that?
And thank you for this question. So it's a really important point because, of course, as Mr. Ray said at the beginning, there are all different shades of dark tourism. And so much tourism research has concentrated on tourism to the very, very darkest sites that actually we know a lot about tourism to Auschwitz. We know a lot about tourism to battlefields. And what we know from that research is actually most people are incredibly respectful most of the tourists who travel to these places are traveling for educational reasons, to find out things about their family history, for example, and to learn. And if you look at every single international visitor who travels to Auschwitz is a tourist, every single one, the good ones and the bad ones. And I think the tendency is to look at behavior that we don't approve of. So, for instance, young people taking selfies in concentration camps. Now, young people take selfies wherever they go. It's part of how they experience the world. It's part of how they learn. But when we see young people doing that at commemorative sites, we think that this must be tourists doing a bad thing, as if the other people who are there aren't tourists. Right. But everybody who visits these sites is a tourist, apart from the domestic visitors. So yes, tourism to these sites needs to be managed in a more sensitive way. But I think all the research we have says that the vast majority of tourists visiting these sites are respectful and are traveling for educational reasons.
Okay. Samik Roy sir, I know you have quite a strong opinion about it, but I would let that pass for now because James has to leave in some time. So I will come back to James you again with the another question. So as you can know that this narratives associated with the dark tourism sites, right? So these narratives can be very well used by some of the people who, I mean, bad people within the quotes, as you said. These narratives can be used as a promotion of the sufferings, and that can actually give rise to some political instability also. And that in the later days we have seen, like Ukraine and Russian thing that we have been seeing. So how do you say that, or how do you believe as a dark tourism scholar that we can manage these political, ideological standpoints and the narratives that we find from the dark tourism sites? And who controls them actually?
Thank you very much for this question. This is very much something that I think is one of the next areas for dark tourism scholars to look at. It's much more about issues of politics, representation and power in dark tourism that go beyond those ideas of the individual encounter with the dark site and think more about the relationship of the dark site to its setting and to its culture. And certainly we have seen lots of examples where commemorative events, for example, that attract tourists from around the world, can be used by whoever is in power at the time in the country to push a particular nationalist agenda. And so we see, for example, if we look at tourism to Gallipoli in Turkey. That is a site that has a very mixed set of narratives behind it about both Turkish or Ottoman heroism and a sense of the forging of national identity, as well as for Australians and people from New Zealand, a sense of their own national identity forged through not success and valiance, but through suffering and death and tragedy. And so there are contested legacies for all of these things. And we need to be very, very conscious of who is promoting them and why. And some of the research that we've done very recently that I've carried out with my colleague Metod Suligoy from Slovenia, we looked at dark tourism associated with events in the Western Balkans, in a region where there are continuing frozen conflicts, but also very, very recent conflicts that have taken place. There are events there that could be commemorative events, but also sporting events, which never really get talked about in terms of dark tourism, where those legacies of war and conflict become very apparent in the way that fans from different areas interact with each other. So to try and make this a little bit more concrete for you, we looked at sports events in the countries of the former Yugoslavia. One of the things that happened just a few years ago was that fans of the Serbian football team Red Star Belgrade put a T-55 tank outside their football stadium when they knew that fans from a country they'd recently been at war with were going to be coming. turning this sports event, a Champions League match, turning this sports event into something that was much darker. And we have international travelling fans coming into a situation where narratives of war and conflict became very, very real and very, very apparent for them. And they were enabled to do this because the country they were in and the government ruling the country they were in legitimised it. They allowed this to happen. It suited their nationalist narrative about who was right in a war. And so these dark narratives can be manipulated, and tourists can unwittingly become part of that.
Right. So you still did not answer my question. Who controls those narratives?
Who controls those narratives? Okay, so
because I am saying this because we are in the infancy stage of dark tourism sites, and India, as you know, is a very political country. We are very politically involved. So how do you define? Because this thing, whatever you say, may go into the policy documents. That who controls these narratives?
Okay, so I'm reminded of Bob McKercher's comment from the very first edition of the Journal of Sustainable Tourism, where he said that tourism is a private sector dominated industry and as such almost impossible to control. And I think we can fall into the trap of tourism academics of saying somebody must do something, the government must do this, somebody has control, but most of tourism is actually completely out of government control. The exception to that, I think, are some of those big heritage sites, commemorative events, things that are tied to big national narratives. So we see in lots of countries, governments, because of the way that they fund, license and promote these sites and these events, they have the ability to manipulate the messages that are there. That has always been the case and will always be the case. The hope that tourism offers, I think, is that by bringing international visitors to a site, it allows for the presence of alternative narratives to be told. Tour guides, for example, working with American tourists visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki in a group, have the ability to tell a story about peace and reconciliation that isn't perhaps part of the national story and the national tragedy of what happened. So there's always the possibility at the more local level and the more individual level for finessing these stories and reinterpreting them. But when these sites are part of the big national narratives, then governments always control them.
Sure. So I would not keep you waiting. I'll shoot the last question at you. After that, you can leave. So, I mean, coming on to the politically unstable areas, you did a very interesting study in the Western Balkans, right, with your co-author. And you tried to find out or connect, so as to say, the concept of sustainable development with the coexistence of the communities. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we looked at SDG 16, the 16th Sustainable Development Goal, which is about peace, justice, and strong institutions. And we were interested to find the relationship between tourism and peace in this region. The relationship between tourism and peace has been very well researched over the last 30 years, and there's still no agreement on whether tourism requires peace for its existence or whether tourism can actually contribute to building peace.
Right.
We found in the case of the Western Balkans that when we looked at a region that has very, very recent conflicts, that those narratives of conflicts came into the tourism product to such an extent in some places, particularly around heritage sites, commemorative events and sports events, that there was no possibility for developing tourism until that darkness was somehow managed and dealt with. So our conclusion was that actually in that context, the darkness of some tourism experiences can actually be so present and so visceral that actually international tourists would not want to visit. So for example, attending a commemorative site linked to the conflict in Bosnia in the 1990s is something that I think a lot of international tourists would be very interested to do in Bosnia. It's something that, for a lot of international tourists, that war and that conflict is a very important part of the image of that country. It's part of how they came to know about that region. And it might not be their main motivation for visiting, but it'd certainly be something they'd be interested in doing while they were there to learn more. However, at certain times of the year, when particular events are taking place and particular commemorations that are taking place, the tensions around those sites and the possibility of violence, of unrest is so strong that actually no tour operator in their right mind would take tourists to those sites. So I think there are some places where the contemporary nationalist or political energy around a place coalesces during certain events and commemorations, and at those points that they're just not suitable for international tourists.
Exactly.
And
so it's a very
we found that in terms of dark tourism being a vehicle for promoting sustainable development through peace in the region, it was something that could be done, but there were so many issues that still needed to be worked out between those communities in the destination that it feels like it was still quite a long way off.
Yes, in the same note only, I was reading Stone's article, Philip Stone's, who is a very huge scholar in this, and I was seeing that somebody's glory may be somebody's defeat. And so some tourist, maybe it's a glorifying place for them, but for the other country, it may be a place where they got defeated. So it's a very thin thread that hangs the balance.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really insightful quotation you provided there from Philip. And one of the things as well about a lot of contemporary dark tourism is that in postmodern culture, hypermobility, this has sped up our ability to access some of these dark sites. We know about conflicts, we know about problem areas more quickly, and it's much easier to visit them. So tourists may be in a place where victims and perpetrators coexist. And one of the things that that Stone and Sharpley have written about is about how the darkness of a site becomes less and less as we move away from it in time. Exactly. But where we have there have been tourist packages offered in the last 10 years to go to Syria, for example, that take into their purview visiting contemporary battlefields. When we get to that level of the contemporaneous dark tourism experience, then that issue that you bring up of some people's victory, some people's tragedy, is so much more real, and tourists have many more questions to ask by visiting those places.
Okay, so I wish I could have gone longer, but I am aware of the issues that you have, so I would let you go for now. It was, I mean, the audience is the evidence that how insightful this session was, and thank you so much for accepting this invitation and paying, honoring our invitation. So we would look forward to have a longer session with you in future. Yeah. Absolutely, yes. Okay, so thank you so much, James.
Thank you.
Yes. So, Anila ma'am, would you like to say a few words for James?
Yeah. Am I audible? Good morning, Professor James. It's a great pleasure to have you here, and I'm extremely delighted to hear the views. I can understand your time schedule, and it's a very busy schedule. Really, grateful from the Department of Tourism, from college, from the management. I really express my sincere gratitude. Hope we will have further kind of discussions in the coming sessions. I think I won't take much time because others also will be joining in me. But as you know, are really want to go, I really express my gratitude. The moment. Thank you so much, Professor James.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. I really appreciate your thanks. I'm very sorry that I have to leave. Unfortunately, I have a crisis that I have to deal with here. But thank you very much for the invitation. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the event.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Okay, so Samik Roy sir and Gul ma'am, sorry for keep you waiting because it has been James was on a tight schedule. So I hope you understand the stand that I had to take or the difficult position that I had to put you people in. But meanwhile, we have all the stage to ourselves right now, so we will continue with the same thing. So Samik sir, I know as a historian, as a person who has a lot of experience on the field about dark tourism sites, and you have been a person who has been really interested in the freedom struggles of India. How, I mean, coming back to the same question that dark tourism glorifies human suffering. What will be your point of note on that?
No, actually, Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Actually, I do agree with James because it not glorify the dark tourism or the sites, in fact, because as I have told you before, experiences are more important. Who creates and control experiences? Because I think stakeholders of tourism should be divided into two. It is creator of experiences and consumer of experiences. So today's point of view, this creator of experiences may create some experience, say for Indian freedom struggle, fine, which is only of lore, legend, and bravery, and against the massacres and domination and killing. In that case, it will be subjective. And it is better to sustain this kind of product, whether dark tourism or freedom struggle, because I don't believe that freedom struggle should go with dark tourism, because freedom struggle is more of glory, more of history, glorious past. So it should not be equated with dark tourism concept. Rather, I think it should be placed, or narrative should be set in a way, authentic and objective manner. In that way, we can attract more tourists across the world than the narrative and subjective narrative, or narrative should not be set with a kind of intention, whether nationalist intention or not, whatever may be.
Right.
So it is better to think in this way.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Gul ma'am, you come from Turkey, which is a culturally and politically also, it's a very active country and it's a very beautiful destination as well. What is your view? Because you also talked about Shinkala, the destination, and it was a place where this Trojan horse thing happened. So, what's your view that does dark tourism promote human sufferings, or how do we draw the line between dark tourism promoting human suffering or promoting the experiences?
Thanks for your question, Professor Mohanty. We lost many soldiers during World War I, and also Australians, New Zealanders, and British Army lost their soldiers during this war. This is so harmful, and we have many cemetery in Çanakkale from different countries and different nations also. But the soldiers from other countries is our brothers and is are sons of the Turkish nations. We respect and we have their nations peacefulness. So I think if we respect all nations' missions or we respect all the soldiers' efforts, whatever they do, these efforts, and what is the main opportunities for winning the war or defeating the war? What is the most challenging parts of the defeating war? If we learn from the past, I think this is the most important lesson from the dark tourism, I think. The question is, dark tourism ethical? Is very philosophical question, I think. It is not black and white. And also the answer comes down our personal code of ethics, our culture, our upbringings, our past experience, a number of factors is possible. And when we decide whether or not a particular site is ethical to visit, we can want to consider the nature of site as well as its age, finances, design, and more. Sometimes the behavior of tour operators or tourists come into play as well. The answer will vary from person to person, I think, and hopefully this guides this mission and this understanding helps you decide. It is different from person to person, and it is so normal. Some tourists can learn from our past, and some tourists can have a big desire to learn about new things and about sad things and about pains. And some tourists can only look the touristical sites. I hope I can answer your question, Professor.
Yes. Very well, ma'am. Samik sir, as we have been discussing in our last conversations also, we see that these narratives that build the whole experience of the dark tourism sites. So there is a whole narrative that builds up, and as a guide, as a person who trains the guides, and Gul ma'am also who trains the guide, you must be knowing that how these narratives are, like very fragile things that can make or break the whole destinations. So in the same question that I asked to James, because I think being on ground, you can answer the question much more in the better way. So how do you see that these narratives should be built and these narratives can be promoted? Samik Roy sir, would you please like to comment on that?
As I have told already, that narrative
Yes.
should be set in an objective way, not in a subjective way. And also, we have to incorporate the authentic information, stories, and histories. Interpretation is different. Interpretation, it is better you can interpret both way, or let the interpretation leave for the visitors. They will judge it. So a narrative should be like that.
But as Gul ma'am says that it is neither black or nor white, so it becomes a subjective inquiry rather than an objective inquiry. Then you saying yes or no or objective, does it justify the argument, sir?
No, primarily, do you think, is there any dark tourism, as already James Kendall said, that there is no dark tourist as such, and dark sites we cannot say, because within the dark sites we have both that contradictory things like glory and opposite to the glory, victory and defeat is all together. So it is very difficult to say this site is the dark tourism site and the other sites are not. If you ask me about the paranormal sites, in that case, it is more fun, which already James told, than a fun or entertainment, than it is a kind of fear psychosis. So, is there any dark tourism or not? There is a doubt. we did for commodifying for the business, as you have told already.
Okay. Gul ma'am, your comments on that, because you said it is neither black or nor white. So your comments on that.
I don't have any comment related to past mainly, I think. I would like to refer to this question. It is ethical to observe sufferings. It is possible to show the past sufferings to present tourists. Yes, it's possible, but it is not important whether it is white or black. It is important that we should respect and we should get some beautiful thoughts, good thoughts to our tourists as a tour guides, as a tour operators, or another stakeholders. It is not important, but if we are working in some places mainly related running by dark tourism, we should have some consciousness to our tourists. Firstly, we should respect and we should more responsible to our past or our history, I think. I would like to refer to this issue.
Okay. So it's a very nice thought, actually, that we should respect the history that we have, irrespective of whether it is dark or bright. So it's a very nice thought, ma'am. So we'll move on to the next question to Samik Roy, sir. In our last discussion, sir, I remember you were giving a very passionate narrative about the dark tourism sites of India, and this is the theme of this talk, if I'm not wrong. So can you please shed some light on the freedom struggle and the connections with dark tourism sites? But you have already said that it's not dark tourism sites per se, but it's a glorifying site. But what about the deaths that has happened at that time? So can you please elaborate on what was your conjecture that you were trying to put forward, sir?
No, in fact, when there are, in fact, freedom struggle means you want to, or rather the community or a nation or a territory wanted to be free from the domination. So if it is so, then there should be a conflict between dominated and dominant. It's all over the world. And in that case, there will be some death, battle, conflict. Some will be victorious, some will be loser. So these are together. We cannot distinguish them. This is only glory and this is only. If you make it total history, as Dr. Gould said, look into it as a total history. So there are sides which are suffering side, there are sides, glorious sides, victory side and defeat side. That makes the whole picture, and that is the objective picture, not the partial picture. If we think that British had done a lot of thing which is against India, but parallelly British also has done for their own interests, for sure, which we are enjoying till date, like administration and all those things, education system, everything from them. So in that case, we cannot say the whole thing, freedom struggle, is only the glory. There are also atrocity of the British, and there are also good things of the British and bad things of the British. And if you ask me, just I have referred about Kanpur massacre. In the Kanpur massacre, as you know, the Britishers were died because of the mutineers' siege, and then aftermath, when they took control over Kanpur, then they hanged mutineers. So both sides, together. So we cannot say like this, that this is only the dark. That's why I want to keep freedom struggle trail apart from the dark tourism, side of dark tourism. Better to look into as Azadi trail or the freedom struggle trail, keeping the objective view.
But my point is, sir, if it is not dark tourism, then which one is dark tourism?
It is very difficult, as already after discussion with you, I thought several times. Now I come to the conclusion:
Yes.
is there any dark tourism at all exist? Or as Dr. Gould said already, we can look into these tourisms like disaster, like cemetery tourism, or war tourism, anything like that. So we can divide them in that way, or as a discrete unit. In that way, it will be easier to objectify it.
Okay. So it's a very interesting point that you are referring, because as you are saying, or as Gul ma'am is also saying, that there is both positive and negative side to a battle. So somebody wins, and for somebody it is a positive thing, for somebody it is a negative thing, for somebody it is a respectable thing, for somebody it is a matter of shame. And we can, as you said, we can actually divide. I think this is the first time we are getting into a conjecture where we are actually dividing the whole scholarship of dark tourism into two different parts, in which there is a positive side and there is a negative side. So dark tourism is not actually dark only, rather than the brighter sides also. And please keep a note of all these things. Huh?
Priyapishno, one
Yes.
experience I want to share.
Yes, please, sir. Please, sir.
Most people, when they travel to Calcutta,
Huh. Yes, sir.
I found in their program or itinerary, it is said that you should visit some slum areas of the city to see the sufferings. That means most majority of the inbound tourists, they do not want to see these sufferings. Why? As already James told, because they are in leisure. They do not want to spoil their time seeing sufferings. First thing. Second thing, there are few people who wanted to see, not to enjoy the suffering. Rather, they want to go into deep why there is suffering. That is my experience. Yes.
Now it's becoming a little bit intense. So I would put up a easier question for Gul ma'am. Ma'am, you have already training a lot of guides, as you have been noticing, and you are a certified, I mean, a very well-known person in all of Turkey. In fact, you head a department which is in terms of tour guiding. So what's your thought about these narratives, like narratives and dark tourism sites? How do you train the guides for narrating the proper story?
Thanks for your question. I am academician for approximately 13 years in tourism industry, and before I am also a professional tour guide in a national context. So I can say that tour guides have a deep contact with some tourists visiting destinations, and this should be considered for tour guides as important stakeholders in the tourism industry. One of the most important researchers, like Francis and their friends, as I remember, highlighted that tour guides play a significant role in promoting any tourism types or any touristic places. Also, they manage the negative impact to the lowest level possible. Yes. Similarly, another research impressed that the needs for tour guides is so important in tourist experience and revisitation and tourist satisfaction and destination image and many more I can say for better tourism industries and also sustainable tourism development. So we can say that tour guides is a very critical role in the tourism industry. We are the bridge from between tourists and local community and many tourism stakeholders. We serve tourists to many different touristic services. For example, we are a leader. For example, we are a teacher. For example, we are also a host. We are a stakeholder. We are representative to tourism industry. Maybe we can represent to travel agency because we are the mirror of the travel agencies and, for example, commodities and local persons. So we have a crucial importance in the tourism industry. Tourism also produces stories, and some destinations have strong stories, especially dark tourism places. And some stories are created by a representation or a storyteller who creates the narrative text. One of these narrators in the tourism sector is the tour guides. The feature that distinguish the tour guide from the tourism stakeholders is that it creates a narrative in the place and the time of the experience. All environments where the tour guide is present are to some extent where the themes of the storytelling are revealed. Tour guides are generally defined as storyteller. And the biggest reason for establishing storytelling in guided tours is interpretation ways in the tourism industry. So many stories need to be interpreted by good storytellers by a narrative model. Any story is a narrative and reflects the way we give the meaning to personal experiences as individual learning to itself. So I would like to finish my words, the importance of the tour guides to storytelling as a narrative model. Thanks for your question, Professor.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And it's a very good thing that you said that tour guides are in fact the bridges that bridge the experiences of the tourist, as well as they also bridge from the supply side also. So they also provide the supply side of the story. Samik sir, you have been a storyteller also, and I'm sure your grandson and granddaughter will be having a lot of things to hear from. Can you please narrate some of your experiences of dark tourism sites across India, or maybe in Kolkata where you specialize, because there cannot be any better person than you, and since this is based on Indian Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, so can you please highlight some of the sites, as you said, which are connected with the freedom struggle of India?
Now, do you want to know the sites in Calcutta or across India, or you want to know only the freedom struggle sites?
Across India would be very good, sir, if you can.
No, in fact, if you think about Calcutta, because Calcutta has a great role in the freedom struggle. So we have a number of sites related to freedom struggle. And one of them I can mention now. It is the place which is called Writers Building, once upon a time the headquarters of British East India Company.
Okay.
And which was, in fact, during the early 20th century, attacked by a lot of freedom fighters. Mm-hmm. And a notorious police officer, IG prison of that time, was being killed there by some of the freedom fighters. So this one, and also, as you know, the Alipur Central Jail, it is now going to be a museum of the internment site museum. And as you know, the Andaman Cellular Jail as well, which is also quite famous. So there are ample number of sites across India, as we have told about the Kanpur massacre, and also we can talk about the mutiny sites across India. So there are different, and each have stories of each building, and almost the stories 365 days a year. So a lot of stories with freedom struggle. In fact, I want to inform you, in the last March, when India government announces for the celebration of 75th year of Indian independence, Calcutta, India Tourism Kolkata, along with had supported me and patronized. We have started to, suddenly we thought that Azadi means freedom struggle trail would be a good product. Not thinking of dark tourism, but it is independently could be a good product. So we started to create first digital contents. Already we have created the digital contents, 50 digital contents of different lesser known sites of India. Then we created the video contents with storytelling and virtual tours as well. Then we have next step, try to increase the awareness of the trail among the travel agents, tour operators, hoteliers through webinars. And lastly, in the December, we have made a freedom struggle tour. It's a just 4 hours tour by bus at Kolkata. So these are the steps to make Azadi Trail, promote Azadi Trail as a product for India. Yes.
Right. So before I move to the next question, participant, please note that you can put your questions in the Q&A session or chat box. We will get back to the question once this session finishes. So please put your questions. Our moderators will actually say your question, and based on the merit and time, we will be putting the questions to our esteemed panelist. So next question, coming on to the same aspect of the experience creating that Gul ma'am you said. So marketing plays a very important role in the experience creating within the tourist. And as you may be knowing, so dark tourism is such an fragile subject, or it's such a sensitive topic, that it sometimes becomes very difficult to market that kind of product. Like what do we show them? What do we show the tourists? That some people died here, or some people were murdered here. So how to market? And since you are on the field for some quite a lot of time, can you please tell me that some points that how to market these dark tourism sites?
Yes, thanks for your question. Dark tourism sites, such as graveyards, maybe, could be more fascinating and prospective areas for possible restaurant perspective or spiritual purposes. And some thrill or risk-seeking lures tourists who like to adventure, excitement, and curiosity. And we need to get acquainted with a knowledge of a place that experience a tragedy like mass murder, or again curiosity plays a key role here. Also, self-discovery and learning about such sites to boast about them later in social groups. Many factor that drives this sector is a fascination of the term that, even though it is negative or harsh, many people are curious to understand this term as the concept of that it itself is inevitable in nature and cannot be conquered. Dark tourism can also be linked to mainly heritage tourism. So we can have a most relationship, big relations related marketing to heritage tourism types. Also, the sites could have significant historical influence too, rather than being mere sites where a tragic event has taken place. Maybe empathy could be one of the more aspects that relies on the visitor's ability to know the heroic stories that might have taken place at a particular location. So one of the most important marketing ways is having empathy and running marketing events by emotional ways. And it is another types of motivation also. So we create emotions, a sense of gratitude, insecurity, superiority, or humility. All these factors are intertwined with another, and the field is still being researched upon the understand why aspects, or which is literally driving people to visit places with dark attractions or activities. The media is also undeniable influence over the dark tourism sees interpretation of the landscape, including sites of dark tourism. According to one research, global communication technologies are inherent in both the events, which are associated communication associated with dark tourism product, and represent in the representation of the events for visitors at the site itself. So the relationship between dark tourism and the media is truly interconnected. For example, you know, the Titanic, the film Titanic, is considered to be the genesis of the global media. Although television did not exist and communication were slower than today, newspapers, newsreels were quick to report on the tragedy. And modern media not only plays a role in disseminating information to the public off-site, it also plays an important role in the development of on-site interpretation.
Yes.
So, dealing with past in the dark touristic places is very laborious, and suffering real people are involved, and not everyone accepts that stories about atrocities should be told to tourists just for the sake of entertainment. For example, Dardanelles war in Turkey is an important war, and there is a sadness in both civilizations, both Australians and also Turkish parts. At this point, national consciousness is at the forefront, especially for the Turkish society. Here, marketing activities should be carried out, I think, based on national consciousness, and touristic products should not be commodified with elements such as magnets, paintings, and souvenirs in the marketings. It is necessary to accept these destinations as an element of learning a lesson from the history and also our past. I hope I can answer your question, Professor.
Yes, yes, yes. It couldn't have been more better, but still, I would ask Samik Roy sir's perspective on this. Sir, you have been associated with many of the government bodies that promotes tourism also. So, what's your point on how to promote the dark tourism sites?
No, in fact, promotion of dark tourism site is very difficult to say, because government always thinking, as already Jim said, it is their motivation, political motivation, and all those things. So it's not that always government will promote. It is better to say the industry stakeholders should promote this, and as Dr. Tool said, tour guides can promote this through their storytelling and also through the. And today, tourists who are visiting already, the past tourists, can be the promoter. So they are one of the important part of this promotion.
So word of mouth promotion, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
not only word of mouth promotion, it is very interesting that they can upload their real experiences
Okay.
and in the social media, which can spread all over, and that is one of the important tool to promote the sites, whether it's dark
But
tourism or not.
But as such, as you pointed out, it's a very interesting point that you pointed out that whether government agencies should promote dark tourism sites.
In India, no.
No.
As such, the dark tourism site by the name, no.
Very, very fine, sir. Very fine. Thank you so much. So this is my last question. After that, we will take up the audience question, which are good number, and it's very pertinent questions also. Last question is, and I thought I would not ask this question, but it becomes very pertinent because all these things that we have discussed till now is from the supply side of the dark tourism. But the people who are there at the place, dark tourism site. So somebody's, suppose let's say at some place somebody's father or somebody's relative had died, and you are promoting that place as a dark tourism place. So there has been seen, I mean, in the literature also I saw that there is a lot of contesting debates regarding whether residents like the dark tourism sites to be promoted or not. So in that way, as an administrator, how would you manage these expectations or these moral duties towards the residents of that place?
No, it is a very interesting question. In fact, I had some experiences. Uh, Indian funerals are quite interesting. Yeah,
Right.
maybe someone's death, the family in mourning, they do not want to accept those kind of activities. If I tell or convince the tourists to visit the place, but without taking any photograph, means with respect, because to them it is very interesting and new. Whatever new, people want to know. So if they are respected, do the respect or pay the respect to that and visit the place, watch from a distance, no harm in it. And I had questions from the local families and local people. I convinced them this is a new thing to them. If you are going to visit in a Christian area, don't you like to visit the funeral place? How they are doing the funeral rituals? Yes. So if you do, why you are not allowing the others to do? If they take photograph, then it is a question. If they participate only just watch the thing from distance, they can. This
Okay.
is how this is my real experience, how I manage it.
Very good point, sir. Gul ma'am, your comment on that how does communities can be satisfied while the promoting the dark tourism sites?
Mhm. After a disaster, especially in dark tourism types, many local people are usually put in a painful and uncomfortable situation, and they cannot do any activities related to tourism. On the other hand, with one's hometown being turned into a site of tragic disaster, constant reminders of the site will prevent them from moving beyond the disaster. And also in transition from a place of past disaster to a place at a dark tourism destination, many that is presented as entertainment also. Such dissonance is an integral and unavoidable characteristic of dark tourism, unfortunately. The stigma of that and tragedy may be distasteful to residents who want to live in quiet existence and desire no extra attention. Nevertheless, dark tourism plays a crucial role in empowering and stimulating the community living in a relatively underdeveloped area, maybe located in China's hinterland, or the local residents. And they had a few job opportunities proved by local factories. These factories, however, were severely damaged in the quake, or as a result were either closed or relocated. The town in China, for instance, is preserved by the government to develop disaster dark tourism. According to local residents' comments, in order to make a living, only two options are left for them to choose after the quake. Right. To become a migrant worker in other cities, or to be dark tourism entertainer at home. We have no choice to give them for better life in the dark tourism destinations. This is the most challenges parts in the dark tourism. Active support of host communities is crucial for successful and sustainable tourism development in the literature also. For dark tourism planners and managers, it is essential to assess local residents' supportive attitude, but they should be done very effectively. And they should be more. They should have more motivation for do this. Motivation theories indicate that human behavior is often driven by extrinsic or intrinsic factors. In terms of resident supports for tourism, the extrinsic factors are the positive and negative impacts of tourism types, and is so important to running dark tourism activities also. I hope I can answer your question, Professor.
There could not be any better answer, ma'am. So we would now quickly move on to the audience question, which is a good number, and some of the questions are very interesting also. So the first question is from Dr. Sanjay Kumar Mahar, and he asks that does dark tourism site creates thrill, a sense of thrill among the tourist, and does or he's asking, should dark tourism sites be promoted on a larger scale basis? So there are two questions. Does dark tourism sites promote a sense of thrill among the tourist? And the second question is, should the dark tourism sites be promoted on a larger scale or on a bigger scale? So Gul ma'am, I'll start with you on your response.
Yes, surely. Thanks for the question. I think many tourism types can enhance and can show the thrillness or some desires because when we are in the tourism as a tourist, we learn new things and we create new rooms in the, for example, in a city. We interact with local people, or we interact with some tourism stakeholders, and new things, I think, means the new thrillness. But in the dark tourism types also surely is a different thrillness we should mean. Maybe it is a real fear. It means a real fear, or it means a real empathy, and tourists love this. Tourists like the thrillness, unseenable parts of the places, new features in the destinations. Because when have a tour group in Turkey, when I show a flower to many tourists, has a very anxious and has a very sympathy to this, because they haven't seen anymore in their past life. So dark tourism, yes, a little have a little means to give us thrillness. It is possible. And another question is, as I understand truly, it means, sorry, tourism can interact with large communities, and we wish as a tour operators or tourism stakeholders to welcome more tourists in our places. For example, Turkey has a very promotion types in these years, the previous or past years. After COVID-19, we need to more tourists to Çanakkale, Anıtkabir, or maybe Istanbul, or maybe another cities in dark tourism places. Surely we wish to welcome more tourists, large communities, but when we run into tourism activities in dark tourism sites, we should be a little careful, or we should be a little consciousness for gathered tourism. And we named to this consciousness, this is carrying capacity. If we know the carrying capacity in tourism cities like China, Hiroshima, Çanakkale, or many more dark tourism destinations, I have no problem for getting more and more touristic movements.
Okay.
I hope I can answer your question.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, without any further ado, I will ask Samik Roy sir, in fact, a question from my own student. And she asked from Sheikh Hifa. So, she asked that does dark tourism site creates a mental impact on the tourists? So, how do you balance the mental, the impact that is on the mental health of a person, any new person? Samik Roy sir, can you please answer that?
Yeah, in fact, it creates impact specifically when it is related to sufferings.
Right.
This is my experience, which when I took the people to that places of India, remote rural places, there are a lot of sufferings. I found there is a great impact on them. One thing. And another thing, sadness and all these things. And even I have seen the people when they return back to hotel, they couldn't eat even on that night, particular night.
Yes.
So it's an emotional impact. And another thing I can say, there are darker sites like cemetery. If someone comes to visit the cemeteries, graveyard, it is also my experience. I found a lot of British. They are coming to Calcutta only to trace the roots of their family in India through visiting graveyard. In that case, if they get some information, it will be a thrill to them. Well.
Very well, sir. My last two questions, one to Dr. Gul and one to Samik Roy, sir, you. I'll start with Dr. Gul. So Dr. Nim Tashring asks that it is really hard and interesting to note that can dark tourism sites be promoted at the hilly regions? Maybe he's from the northeast area of India, which is primarily a hilly region. So Gul ma'am, can dark tourism sites be promoted in the hilly regions? Because there are many stories in the so they say that mountains has a lot of stories to tell. So what's your point on that?
Um, Thanks for your question. I would like to learn the hilly regions. What is the location?
So the question is, can dark tourism sites be promoted in the hilly regions of any country?
Okay. Dark tourism sites, yes, should be promoted in the many regions. It is so impossible, but when we promote that, we should be careful and we should look up to some promoting types, as we mentioned today, because promoting dark tourism types is a very impractical part in the tourism industry. We shouldn't be accustomed to any other tourism, dark tourism types. It is so unseenable marketing types in the tourism industry.
Right.
So when we marketing dark tourism in some regions, especially some regions, we can the main factor is keep the local people attitude for the dark tourism types, and we respect to all people's lives and we respect all dark tourism rules in marketing these cities. I hope I can answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. So final question to Samikra sir, and I think this is a very interesting question. In your view as a practitioner, what is the secret of behind promoting a dark tourism? So one line only. In one line, if you have to say that how to promote a dark tourism site, and up to a person who is not familiar with the dark tourism site. So how would you say that, or how would you promote this dark tourism sites for a person who is not familiar with the concept itself?
In one line, it is very difficult anyway. But I can say, if you tell this through the storytelling,
True.
that is the way.
So narratives and storytelling.
Yeah, setting a narrative and storytelling.
So thank you so much. It has been a long session and you have been very kind and patient in listening to all the questions and answering to the very best. In fact, I would say that the best. So I would thank everybody who are present out here. Regarding the formal vote of thanks, I would like to ask or request our HOD, Dr. Anila Thomas, to kindly propose the vote of thanks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mohandi. Nothing else can be a substitute for a few well-chosen, well-timed, sincere words of praise. They're absolutely worth a fortune, said by Sam Walton. Honorable members of the distinguished panel, Most Reverend Dr. Sister Lilitha Thomas, Principal Jyotirniwas College Autonomous, participants from various countries across the globe, my dear students. It's my honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks and acknowledge the valuable contributions of many on the occasion of International Panel Meet on the theme Venturing into the Panorama of Dark Tourism, Discover the Untold Tales. I, on behalf of the principal, management, and members of the Department of Tourism and Travel Management, Jyotirniwas College Autonomous, Bangalore, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the eminent panel for gracing this occasion with their esteemed presence and sharing with us their insightful deliberations and viewpoints. First and foremost, I extend a big thank you and express and acknowledge my appreciation to Dr. James Kennel, Principal Lecturer and Deputy Head, Department of Marketing, Events and Tourism, University of Greenwich, United Kingdom, for sparing his valuable time from the very busy work schedule to grace the occasion. Dr. James, today we are fortunate to hear your thoughts as this is sure to encourage us in our future proceedings. I express my deep gratitude to Mr. Samik Roy, Regional Level Guide Training, Department of Tourism, Government of India, for your great support and sharing your valuable thoughts. Thank you, sir, for your gracious presence. Further, I would like to express my warm appreciation to Dr. Gul Erkom Bera, Associate Professor, School of Tourism and Hotel Management, University of Sinop, Turkey, for your thought-provoking and interesting views. Thank you, ma'am, for gracing the panel with your esteemed presence. With a deep sense of appreciation, I thank our beloved Principal, Dr. Sister Lolita Thomas, for the constant support, guidance, and encouragement throughout the whole process in making this event a successful one. I extend my sincere gratitude to Sister Rosalie, Administrator, and all sisters of JNC community, Vice Principal of Arts, Science, Commerce and Management streams, faculty members of various departments of the college, non-teaching and support staff for their timely support and encouragement. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record my sincere thanks to Mr. Praveen, Mr. Basil, Mr. Richard, and the entire team, Mr. Anand also, for rendering the perfect technical support and guidance that has extended to all of us at this occasion. Well, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel started rolling months ago. It required meticulous planning, and I am fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated faculty members of Tourism Department, Mr. Prakash Shah, Dr. Manisha C, and Mr. Priyakrishna Mohanty, and the student coordinators of the event. I can't thank enough of everyone for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Last but not the least, I express my warmest appreciation to all the participants for their exuberant contribution throughout the whole program in making this event a creative and insightful session. Finally, I express my heartfelt gratitude to Jesus Almighty for making today's event a resounding one. With His blessings and grace, we are able to make this event a successful one. Once again, thank you, everyone. Professor, James was a little bit, I understand that it's a little, difficult to bring all of you into one platform, but we hope that, we have made a very wonderful kind of, session. Even the participants also were, able to take this opportunity in a better way. Thank you so much.
So before we leave, Sir Samik sir or James, Gul ma'am, would you like to have last few words as a feedback, obviously?
Yes, surely. Thank you so much to all organizing team, Professor Mohanty, and also Professor Anila. I think in this session it has a very big effort, and this event very flawless. Thanks for all issues during this event. Also for inviting us to my dear colleges, and finally to the participants who showed interest to our session. Best regards from my country, Turkey, to my dear colleagues and friends, India. Have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am. Samik sir, would you like to say a few words as a feedback?
Yes, thanks to all the participants, distinguished audience, and as well as the speakers, specifically Dr. Gul and Dr. James. And special thanks goes to the team, Anila Madam, and Krishna and Manisha, for organizing such kind of seminar or webinar, I can say.
Thank you.
We are looking forward.
Sure.
Future. Thank you.
Participants, please note that the feedback form is still in the chat box. You can refer to the feedback form and fill it so that we will be able to send you your certificates. Please fill the feedback form without any fail. Thank you everyone for the coordination, For now, I will sign off from Jyotinivas College, Bangalore. Thank you.
Thank you.